Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, the Status Quo. Chapter 27, Understanding Material Nature. Text 1. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho Rajate Prakritar Gunai Avikarad Akartritvan Nirgunatvaj Jalarkavat. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection in the water. Purport. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapila Dev has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment and transcendental knowledge for understanding the science of God. Here, the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes of material nature remains just like the sun reflected on water. When the sun is reflected on water, the movement of the water or the coolness or unsteadiness of the water cannot affect the sun. Similarly, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. Bhagavatam 1.2.7. When one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he becomes just like the sun reflected on water. Although a devotee appears in the material world, actually he is in the transcendental world. As the reflection of the sun appears to be on the water but is many millions of miles away from the water, so one engaged in Bhakti Yoga process is nirgun, or unaffected by the qualities of material nature. Avikar means without change. Avikara means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that each and every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and thus his eternal position is to cooperate or to dovetail his energy with the Supreme Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy in activities for sense gratification, this change of position is called avikara. Similarly, even in this material body, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change, because that is his natural duty. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, liberation means reinstatement in one's original position. The original position is one of rendering service to the Lord, Bhakti Yogena Bhaktya. When one becomes detached from material attraction and engages fully in devotional service, that is changelessness. Akartritvat means not doing anything for sense gratification. When one does something at his proprietorship over the activity, when one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship and therefore a reaction. But when one does everything for Krishna, there is no proprietorship over the activities. By changelessness and not by claiming the proprietorship of activities, one can immediately situate himself in the transcendental position in which one is not touched by the modes of material nature, just as the reflection of the sun is unaffected by the water. 2. Saesha yarhi prakriter guneshvabi visajate ahan kriha vimudhatma kartasmityabi manyate. When the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, identifying his body as the self, he becomes absorbed in material activities, and by the influence of false ego, he thinks that he is the proprietor of everything. Purport. Actually, the conditioned soul is forced to act under the pressure of the modes of material nature. The living entity has no independence. When he is under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is free. But when under the impression that he is satisfying his senses, he engages in sense gratificatory activities. He is actually under the spell of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Prakriter kriyamanani. One acts according to the particular modes of nature he has acquired. Guna refers to the qualities of nature. He is under the qualities of nature, but he falsely thinks that he is the proprietor. This false sense of proprietorship can be avoided simply by engaging oneself in devotional service under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his bona fide representative. Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita was trying to accept for himself the responsibility for killing his grandfather and teacher in the fight. But he became freed from that proprietorship of action when he acted under the direction of Krishna. He fought, but he was actually freed from the reactions of fighting. Although in the beginning, when he was non-violent, unwilling to fight, the entire responsibility was upon him. That is the difference between liberation and conditioning. A conditioned soul may be very good and act in the mode of goodness, but still he is conditioned under the spell of material nature. A devotee, however, acts completely under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Thus his actions may not appear to be of very high quality to the common man, but the devotee has no responsibility. Text 3. Tena samsara padavim avasobhyetya nirvrita prasangi kai karma dosai sad asan mishra yonishu. The conditioned soul therefore transmigrates into different species of life, higher and lower, because of his association with the modes of material nature. Unless he is relieved of material activities, he has to accept this position because of his faulty work. Purport. Here is the word karma dosai, by faulty actions. This refers to any activity, good or bad, performed in this material world. They are all contaminated, faulty actions because of material association. The foolish conditioned soul may think that he is offering charity by opening hospitals for material benefit or by opening an educational institution for material education. But he does not know that all such work is also faulty because it will not give him relief from the process of transmigration from one body to another. It is clearly stated here, Sad Asan Mishra Yonishu. This means that one may take birth in a very high family, or he may take his birth in higher planets among the demigods for his so-called pious activities in the material world. But this work is also faulty because it does not give liberation. To take birth in a nice place or a high family does not mean that one avoids undergoing the material tribulations, the pangs of birth, death, old age, and disease. A conditioned soul under the spell of material nature cannot understand that any action he performs for sense gratification is faulty, and that only his activities in devotional service to the Lord can give him release from the reaction of faulty activities. Because he does not cease such faulty activities, he has to change to different bodies, some high and some low. That is called samsara padavim, which means this material world, from which there is no release. One who desires material liberation has to turn his activities to devotional service. There is no alternative. Text 4. Artehya vidyamanepi samshrishtir na vibhartate Yayato vishayan asya swapne nartagam hoyata. Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease. And just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. Purport. The example of a dream is very appropriate. Due to different mental conditions in dreams, we are put into advantageous and disadvantageous positions. Similarly, the spirit soul has nothing to do with this material nature, but because of his mentality of lording it over, he is put into the position of conditional existence. Conditional existence is described here as Jayato Vishayan Asya. Vishaya means an object of enjoyment. As long as one continues to think that he can enjoy material advantages, he is in conditioned life. But as soon as he comes to his senses, he develops the knowledge that he is not the enjoyer. For the only enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, he is the beneficiary for all the results of sacrifices and penances, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. And he is the proprietor of all the three worlds, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He is the actual friend of all living entities. But instead of leaving proprietorship, enjoyment, and the actual position as the friend of all living entities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we claim that we are the proprietors, the enjoyers, and the friends. We perform philanthropic work thinking we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country, but actually he cannot be the greatest friend of anyone. The only friend is Krishna. When one tries to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend, one should do that. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. The power of friendship is limited. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are an unlimited number of living entities, and our resources are limited. Therefore, we cannot be of any real benefit to people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may know the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend is Krishna. Then this illusory dream of lording it over material nature will vanish. Text 5. We'll continue from text 5 on Monday, and we'll stop reading today. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Nrsimhapuri Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai, Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Shyam Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagi Ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagi Ki Jai, Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari 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 Bol. Dhanavad Pranam.